In Las Vegas, 1963, everyone knew who was really in charge. The money, the stages, the casinos, everything had an owner. But that night, a man crossed a line that should never be crossed. Not with a boss, not with a soldier, with Dean Martin's wife. What happened in the next 10 seconds didn't make the newspapers, but it forever changed how Las Vegas viewed power, respect, and how far someone would go to protect those they love. A warm and human tone, a calm rhythm, emotional pauses, and an intimate and engaging documentary style. Jean Martin noticed the touch even before she could identify who was doing it. She was sitting next to Dean, comfortably seated in a private room at the Sands Lounge, laughing at a casual comment he had just made, when she felt the firm pressure of a hand on her waist. It wasn't a bump, it wasn't a confused gesture, it was deliberate, possessive. She gasped for air for a moment. Jean looked up. The man in front of her looked to be in his 40s. He wore a rumpled dark suit, his hair slicked back, and his face bore the marks of years of fighting. His eyes were glazed, too drunk to hide it. Still, there was something more than alcohol there, something dangerous. Jean didn't know who he was, but she recognized the type. Las Vegas taught that quickly, and this man was trouble. The hand remained there, squeezing lightly, as if it were his property, something available. Jean turned her face to Dean. Dean was no longer the same as seconds before. The smile had vanished. The relaxed expression had evaporated. In its place, something rare had emerged, something Jean had only witnessed a few times throughout the wedding. A rigid jaw, a fixed gaze, complete attention fixed on that hand on her waist. The room began to fall silent. The conversations around them diminished. Heads turned. People noticed. Jean felt the tension leave Dean like electricity in the air. She wanted to speak, to interrupt, to ease the tension. "It's okay," she thought of saying. "Let's go." But before she could open her mouth, the man spoke. "You're too beautiful to be with this clown." He was referring to Dean. He called Dean a clown, and he didn't remove his hand. In that instant, Jean understood that the next 10 seconds wouldn't just be an awkward moment. They would change everything. To understand why that night was so dangerous, you need to understand 3 things: who Vincent Morello was, how Las Vegas functioned in 1963, and what Jean Martin represented to Dean. Vincent Morello wasn't a boss, he wasn't a famous name, but he was exactly the kind of man that made the Mafia feared. He'd worked as an enforcer for the Chicago outfit. He collected debts, solved problems, and, when necessary, made people disappear. By 1963, Vincent had been in Las Vegas for about 5 years. He worked mainly in casinos linked to Chicago interests, the Sands, the Desert Inn, and the Stardust. He observed high-stakes betting tables, intimidated cheaters, and collected from those who owed money. And he was famous for 3 reasons: a short fuse, alcoholism, and hands that never respected limits, especially when he drank. Employees knew, if Vincent was drunk, it was best to disappear. Women, then, learned to avoid him completely. He believed his connections entitled him to anything, to touch whomever he wanted, say whatever he wanted, do whatever he wanted. And almost always he was right. In 1963, you didn't confront the Mafia in Las Vegas. You stayed away and hoped not to be noticed. The city lived on appearances, lights, glamour, celebrities. But behind the scenes, the control was absolute. The Chicago outfit didn't appear as the owner of the casinos. That would draw too much attention. But it controlled the money, the management, the embezzlement, and also the entertainment. If they wanted you on stage, you were there. If they didn't, your career ended there.
Dean Martin knew this. He grew up in Steubenville, Ohio, surrounded by tough men. His father's barbershop was frequented by underworld figures. Dean had learned early on, be respectful, be professional, but never submissive. Jean was different. She was non-negotiable. Dean had married Jean in 1949. It was his second marriage. They had 3 children together, and behind the public image of the relaxed, indifferent man, there was a husband deeply devoted to his wife. With Jean, that persona disappeared. Dean was protective, dedicated, unwavering. Friends knew they could joke with Dean, tease him about his habits, but Jean was forbidden territory. Never. The night of November 15, 1963 began normally. Dean had finished his 10 p.m. show at the Copa Room of the Sands. He sang, joked, charmed the audience. Then he changed clothes and met Jean in the lounge. Married for 14 years, they rarely had moments alone. That night was an exception. The lounge had about 200 people, some guests, some gamblers, some regulars. Dean ordered whiskey, Jean white wine. They talked about their children, commitments, normal life. For almost an hour, everything was perfect. Then Vincent Morello entered. Drunk since the afternoon, he had lost about $15,000 at blackjack, money that wasn't even his. He was furious, humiliated, searching for something to soothe his wounded ego. He saw Jean, blonde, elegant, sitting with a man he didn't immediately recognize. The decision came too easily. Vincent crossed the lounge with unsteady steps. Some recognized him, some moved away. He reached the table and, without saying a word, placed his hand on Jean's waist. Her body abjured. Dean froze. Silence spread. Vincent leaned over, his breath heavy with alcohol. Too beautiful to be with that clown. Only then did he truly look at Dean and recognize him. Dean Martin. The hand was still there. Jean touched Dean's arm, trying to warn him, no, but Dean didn't look at her. His focus was on the hand. 15 seconds had passed. Dean decided. He stood up slowly, without haste, without explosion. He stood between Vincent and Jean, blocking access. He extended his arm behind him, holding his wife's hand. Then he faced Vincent. The room was silent. Dean spoke softly, firmly. "You're touching something that doesn't belong to you." Vincent tried to laugh. "Hey, no disrespect. Take your hand away." The voice didn't rise. It grew colder. Dean took a step forward. Now they were inches apart. "I'll say it once," Dean murmured. "Step away, go away, and we'll forget about it. But if you touch my wife again, it doesn't matter who you know. I'll make you regret it." Vincent saw something in Dean's eyes that made him recoil. It wasn't the singer. It was the man from Ohio, the fighter, the father. He withdrew his hand. "No problem, Dean." He took 2 steps back and left. Dean only turned around when he was sure he was gone. "Are you okay?" Jean nodded, still trembling. The next day, the phone rang, a big shot from Chicago. Vincent was wrong, very wrong. Jean was off limits. But the warning came with it. Don't make it a habit. Dean understood, but he didn't regret it. Years later, Jean would sum it all up. "When he stood up, I knew nothing would touch me while Dean was there." The story never made it into the newspapers, but it spread throughout the city, because that night, in 10 seconds, Dean Martin proved that there was something stronger than the Mafia. Family.